So, Monkey Man is finally out, but did it drive me bananas? Let's find out. Monkey Man is directed by Dev Patel, written by Dev Patel, and stars Dev Patel. Monkey Man is a movie that I was really excited to see. Dev Patel is an actor that I like a lot. I like a lot of his catalog, and I always thought that maybe he would make a good director. And he's directed short films in the past. Those are movies I haven't seen. But if this is the basis of his directing style, I think he's got the sauce. For the most part, Dev Patel delivers a really good film that wears its inspirations on its sleeve, even if that can be to the detriment of some of the film. To get it out of the way, the directing is really interesting because this is a movie that, by Dev Patel's own words, has a lot of different inspirations, and this is sort of the film that he wanted to use to pay homage to all of those different inspirations. And as somebody that has done stuff like that before, I totally understand where he's coming from. There's a comment that's been going around that it's John Wick but Indian, which I think is a very reductive statement, and I'll talk about why that is the case. But the action does feel very John Wicky. But one particular thing I don't really like about the action is there's a lot of shaky cam, and it sort of takes away from the grittiness of the environment because we get a lot of blood, we get very good makeup and SFX, but for the most part the action feels sometimes a little too quick cutty, if that makes sense. There's a lot of different cuts, and it cuts to, sometimes other objects, other places, other people, reaction shots. Something will be cut off and you'll cut to that, and then you'll cut right back to the action. It's very quick cutty. I think a couple wide shots in the film could have definitely done a lot of this action justice, but like I said, it wasn't bad. I don't want to make it seem like the action was bad. I was fully hooked when there was action. And sort of bouncing off of that, there is action in the film. This is marketed as an action film, and I would say that yes, this is an action film, but be prepared to not have a ton of it in the film. There are not a ton of action sequences, especially during the second act. It really slows down, and that's one of the sort of issues that I'll talk about. But just to talk about the action in general, it does slow down. There's not a ton of it. The trailer sort of deceives you in that way. Most of this movie is Dev Patel's spiritual journey, or should I say, the kid's spiritual journey. That's his character's name in the movie. It's really interesting because I like the idea of the movie a lot. Sort of the more I think about the film, the more I like it, but there's sort of a lot left to be desired. And I was talking about that with Nico, who I saw this with. There's some things that I think could have been done better writing wise that really holds this movie back from being given a higher score from me. And that's just, there's a lot of stuff that's introduced that isn't touched on later on. Specifically, there's a lot of characters that come in and get like really interesting introductions, and then they don't show up again. And when they do, it's sort of like, oh man, that character is back, and then they don't do anything, and it's like, oh, okay, that was an interesting omission from the film. But they don't get a ton of screen time, and that's really interesting to me because a lot of films have a supporting cast, but I can't think of who a supporting actor would be in this movie because not a ton of people get a lot of spotlight besides Dev Patel. This is a very emotional journey for the kid, but I think that having all these characters introduced and setting them up in that way kind of hindered that sort of experience for me. Another big thing that I said I would touch on is the pacing. There are very long, slow segments in this movie, and to a lot of people, I think that's going to be a turnoff because the trailers marketed this as a action film, a revenge action film. But like I mentioned earlier, this is a spiritual journey for the kid. For a lot of it, there's a lot of talking. There's a lot of mythology dropped. There's a lot of political talk that's dropped. And that is basically all of Act 2, which is most of the movie. I thought it was interesting, though I think a lot of it could have been expanded on, which goes back to my thing about the writing and things not really being fully, I think, dived into as much as they could have been. There's a lot that this movie tries to do, and I respect that a lot. It tries to add a layer of depth, mature depth, I should say, to the action genre by having a very politically charged message and having a very introspective look at fighting and what revenge can do, and having a more less selfish sort of approach to the revenge film. By the end of this, a kid is fighting for more than just his own personal revenge. He's fighting for more of the societal, healing, which I think was a really interesting change, though, like I said, could have been done a lot better. I'd mentioned the editing, but also the cinematography. I liked a lot of the shots. I thought that it visually looked good for the most part. But something that both me and Nico pointed out was there's some shots that look a little bit out of focus when they should be in focus. And it sort of reminded me of Zack Snyder's movie Army of the Dead, where that was a common complaint, and I could see that being a complaint here too. It's a really interesting gritty style that I don't think was fully mastered in this film, but visually it looked pretty good. There were some times where shots would linger a little too long for my liking. The action was really enthralling when it was there. I think the messages were really strong and handled very maturely, and I think that this is an interesting step for the revenge action film genre, because as somebody whose favorite movie is The Crow, that's sort of what draws me into it, is that layer behind the revenge and sort of how it impacts others other than our main character. As a directorial debut, this is good. I don't think that this is a bad film by any means. I liked a lot of it. I liked a lot of the messaging. I love the cultural, like, sort of stamp that this has on it. This film sort of has an unbridled passion that's put into it, and I really, really dug that. It really felt like this was Dev Patel's sort of love letter to cinema that he enjoyed growing up. And that was just a really awesome thing to see. I love seeing movies that just are filled with passion. Monkey Man is a movie that I think a lot of people are either going to like or not like so much. It's a movie that has a lot going for it and doesn't really stick the landing sometimes, but I think for the most part it does a really good job at pulling in the audience when it needs to and having that unique identity to it that the revenge action genre really needs at the moment. I think that there are some things that could have been done better, like I said, but for Dev Patel's feature directorial debut, this is great. I think he should keep going. For my final score, I'm going to give Monkey Man a 7.5 out of 10. It was a really thrilling experience, and I think with some polishing, Dev Patel is going to be a name that we should really look out for. Have you seen Monkey Man? If you have, let us know what you think down below. And hey, here's another review if you want to check it out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.